Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com. How do you protect overalls made out of sweatpants? On today's episode, sponsored by StartSure, I am joined by the Chief Swoveralls Officer at Swoveralls, Kyle Bergman, and the founder and CEO of StartSure, Tim DiPietro. We dive into Swoveralls' e-commerce journey and how insurance plays an important part in the protection of inventory and how StartSure is making that simple for brands and 3PLs to get. As you'll find out in this episode, insurance might not be sexy, but StartSure is sure making it easier.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
All right, we are live here. I am Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, and today I am going to be joined by Tim DiPietro. He is the founder and CEO at StartSure, which is providing a tech focus to the insurance marketplace, which we'll dive into a little later. And we're also joined by Kyle Bergman, who is the guy with the spread, as we say in the profile picture there. He's founder and chief Swoveralls officer at Swoveralls, which is an e-commerce focused brand, which we're going to hear a little bit about too as well. And today is sponsored by StartSure, which you can check out at startsure.co, and we'll be learning a little bit more about their insurance offerings today too. So Tim and Kyle, thanks for joining me today. How are you guys?
Doing great. Thanks for having us here, Kevin.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Definitely happy to get you guys on here and talk to you about these different types of things. So we're going to dive a little bit into kind of just e-commerce in general, focus a little bit on the inventory side of things, and then also on insurance and how to protect that inventory, which is so critical for an e-commerce brand, because without product, you don't really have a company, right, or things to sell overall. But I'm curious here because I think maybe the thing that stands out the most here is Swoveralls itself. For people that maybe haven't heard of Swoveralls, I'm curious, Kyle, maybe you can kind of give us a little intro on yourself, the story of Swoveralls, and maybe answer that question too. What are Swoveralls?
Yes, Kevin, I'd be happy to talk about Swoveralls. I am wearing Swoveralls right now, and I wear them every day. And Swoveralls are the glorious combination of sweatpants and overalls into one incredibly comfy concept. I, at first, many moons ago, back in 2016, was experiencing a personal problem. I realized that I needed a pair of sweatpant overalls in my life, and to my dismay, discovered that no one was offering sweatpant overalls online. It transformed from it's incredible. It's taken me years to be able to say all of that with a straight face, but it's this is not a joke. This is how I, pay for things in life. With sweatpant overalls. But when it went from being a personal problem to a business opportunity is when I used Google's free tool called the Keyword Search Planner and discovered that between 100 and 1,000 people a month were actually Googling sweatpant overalls just like me.
No way.
And I can go super deep into any part of how it went from that point to us just finishing our best year yet and growing year over year for the past 6 years, going into year 7 now.
Wow, very interesting.
Kevin, let me just step in here for a second because I do have to call Kyle out here. Aside from solving for this universal problem that we all face, I think this isn't Kyle's first time broadcasting something. Somehow you made it onto Shark Tank, isn't that right, Kyle?
That is true. Yeah, I in 2019, I had the pleasure and opportunity to pitch Mark Cuban and the rest of the team on Swoveralls. And, I don't want to spoil that episode for anyone, but let's just say that I sit here today as a proud 100% owner of Swoveralls.
All right.
And also I don't, I just gotta, call out Tim, who is, to me, a proud customer of Swoveralls. And I know he has a pair, but it sounds like they're treating him well.
They're very comfortable. I met Kyle, and there's certainly a statement piece. He was wearing those, and I was like, "What the hell are those? And where do I get them?" And he's like, "Funny you should ask." I haven't had the courage to wear them out in public yet, but they're very comfortable around the house. I'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I think actually, Tim, you and I we're having a snowy day here in the Northeast, so it's perfect. The Swoveralls weather, I can imagine actually.
Perfect overall weather.
So very interesting story there. And super interesting too. The amount of people that were searching for sweatpant overalls, but very interesting there. And obviously, with 6 years in the Swoverall game now, in the e-commerce game, obviously a lot of experience there. And we were talking to a little bit before we went live here about how you're very tech focused on your side from the e-commerce perspective. So tell us a little bit about how that's been such an important part of kind of the 6-year journey of Swoverall is being top of mind with that. It's
been, on one hand, it's very easy to look at what we're selling and it's a commodity in the apparel space, but there's a very sophisticated engine underneath. Mm-hmm. I am not an engineer or a developer, but it's a really cool time to be an e-commerce entrepreneur because you can partner with state-of-the-art technologies that are constantly competing to offer best-in-class solutions for brands like Swoveralls. So in no particular order, we're on Shopify. We're currently using Klaviyo. We use Gorgeous for customer service. I'll talk more about our 3PLs, but some other, cool technologies that we are using is Sienna, which is an AI-powered customer service platform, which allows us to scale there. And we are really, last year I created a marketing firm, which is essentially the Swoveralls marketing team. Mm-hmm. And we've gotten really savvy and I think bottom line minded when it comes to how we drive growth from a paid standpoint, and using Replo for landing page builders, using Triple Whale to track attribution agnostically, using software like Rebuy to increase average order value. And we're working with OneText on a really awesome SMS experience. And so, and there's a dozen other services that we're using, including partnering with Tim at Startshire that show it's, the Swoveralls team, my team is 8 people, but the partners that we have on what keeps the lights on is really remarkable.
Yeah, I think it's incredible too to see just the vast amount of tech that's available out there to support all these different aspects of the business. Like you just mentioned, your stack is definitely deep, we could say, as you list off some of those companies you work with there. I think it's very interesting the time that we're in right now, where all of these different techs are coming into place to address all these different parts of the sales process, operations process, all these different things. And you mentioned Tim in there as well from Startshire that you guys utilize too. So I think maybe that's an opportune time for Tim to introduce himself a little bit and Startshire as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Kevin. And, similar to how Kyle came across his, universal truths that led to finding Swoveralls, I came across a similar one after spending almost 20 years now in the insurance business, that no one likes dealing with insurance, right? Mm-hmm. And that, if we look at, how to not only make it simpler for people to get the protection that it needs, because, in the case of, whether it be Kyle or any other entrepreneur here, they put their blood, sweat, and tears into building these companies, making it easy for them to protect them with simple solutions, is really what we set out to do. As I started looking into, some of the problems that existed in the current insurance marketplace, realized that, while getting insurance might be on everyone's checklist when they're starting a business, that typically, because it's such a, perceived pain in the butt, that, it's pushed off to those first contractual requirements for insurance. So then it made me think, all right, well, let's figure out how to tie in with some of those requirements. And our first product to market allows businesses that are operating out of co-working spaces to easily insure themselves, in those spaces and satisfy the contractual requirements in under 60 seconds with a first to market solution there. And we saw a similar opportunity in looking at the way modern businesses today work with the rise of 3PLs, that, we saw a lot of similarities to the rise of 3PLs with the rise of the co-working operators. And as we started looking into them, we realized that the 3PLs all had contractual requirements for the customers that were storing their goods in them to have their own insurance, but that there wasn't an easy way for them to get that. And so last year we launched Start Your Inventory, which allows customers to easily do that as well. Under 60 seconds, purchasing coverage once again with a proprietary first to market solution that we've built, through partner warehouses, and also sort of going into, how to further take technology beyond what we've already done with these embedded solutions, recognizing that for e-commerce companies in particular, and any merchant for that fact, inventory isn't something that's static. It's constantly moving. So we've built a dynamic component to this policy that allows the coverage to automatically adjust as inventory values ebb and flow. And we've done that through integrations that we built with Shopify and Flexport to date, and we're working on others. So at the end of each month, our customers like Kyle will get a email that's very similar to what you get with your electric bill, that, hey, based off of your average inventory for the last month, here's what your adjusted bill is. And they're no longer paying a flat rate for more coverage than they need for most of the year. Or if they have an exceptionally good year, not having to worry about a shortfall in coverage if something was to happen. So, yeah, that's us.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it's such a great thing to not only make the insurance process easy, but I love the approach of, only having to insure the inventory that you actually have, like you said, almost like an electric bill, like you said, like your usage in a sense, right? So I'm curious, Kyle, from your perspective, talk to us a little bit about, inventory for you. Maybe take us back to, 6 years ago when you land this idea for Swoveralls, and how critical just the inventory in general was for you in that initial run, and still is to this day. My
position on inventory has matured significantly. And at the beginning, so to kind of go back in time, okay, I am sitting in the back of the classroom at Stern NYU Business School. That's where I kind of discovered this tool in the MBA program there. And now I'm like, well, how am I going to kickstart and fund this first order, which after finding a supplier was going to come to about $10,000. Minimum order quantity was 500 units at $20 a pop. And I've said this before, and it's all paid back. So I mean, a cautionary and maybe a funny tale in the world of entrepreneurs that are have a couple screws loose. But at the time, I had taken out too many student loans, business school loans from Uncle Sam, and didn't realize that money is dispersed back to your personal checking account. You're supposed to hold on to that until the next semester where you pay it for tuition. And instead of doing that, I took some of this money and I sent it to someone who I'd never spoken to in China to fund the first Swoveralls order. So that's how we got the capital for the first order. Luckily, because of the organic demand that was happening, we sold through that within 2 months, was able to pay that back and somehow graduate. But then also we started to have these inherent cash flow issues that I am sure a lot of e-commerce brands, not just apparel e-commerce, but physical goods e-commerce brands suffer through with cash flow cycles. And we did a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter in 2018. Since then, crowdfunding has become a really important part of the Swoveralls business model, taking after some brands that I really admire, like Taylor Stitch and Aloha's, and another tech company that I want to call out that I'm really excited for us to start working with is called Purple Dot, which is a leader in this space from a pre-order standpoint. But we start to build up more inventory. I only start thinking about commercial insurance in 2019 when we introduced kids Swoveralls, because I want to make sure we don't get sued by parents, and you got to make sure that the buckles and the buttons are lead free. And so for the first 2.5, 3 years of Swoveralls' existence, we didn't have any insurance, which kind of frightens me to say this now as a battered and older founder. But we worked with the company, and you don't know what you don't know. And I've learned over the years to ask more questions, but I think the solution that Tim is offering didn't exist yet because there was still a lot of pain and suffering and no solutions. But the ability to have our premiums tied to what our physical inventory on hand is plays so well into this new outlook I have as an operator of someone who is really bottom line thoughtful. And it's not just about hyper growth anymore, but I'm cool with 20, 30% growth profitably instead of 100% X growth where, we're just all kind of donating it back to the providers that are getting us there in the first place.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's, I love this story too. You funded it with the student loan. I think that's great. And obviously it paid off now. 6 years later, you're here. So that worked out well. But I'm curious, from that perspective, when you did kind of those initial orders and got that inventory initially, was insurance, even crossing your mind at that point?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
No, not at all. And I recently heard a horror story from a fellow apparel founder who was doing business in Mexico, and his facility was in Mexico, and taking his goods to the border, and it was hijacked by the cartel. And it really, for a while I wasn't thinking about a bunch of different risks that could happen with the business, which maybe, if I was more risk averse, I don't know if Swoveralls would have made it to a more profitable present day. But, there's a peace of mind now knowing how, the inventory is protected, certainly as we continue to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of founders too. In the same position, right? You don't necessarily think about those types of things. You're excited about your product. You want to get your product out there. You're trying to stay as lean and as possible. And, maybe you're not thinking about all the risks there. And I got to say, from that story, I do have like this this picture in my head of the cartel all dressed in Swoveralls, potentially, if they hijack Swoveralls. But yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think, like you said, it doesn't really cross the mind most of the times. And I'm curious, Tim, your thoughts there, and maybe some guidance as well for e-com founders. I mean, at what point, like, really should you be thinking about ensuring that inventory in your goods?
Yeah, and Kyle's experience is spot on and par for the course with what we see with other founders. I think entrepreneurs by themselves are risk takers. It's even one of the little slogans on our website: insurance for risk takers. And being risk adverse and being a risk taker, insurance is probably the last thing on most entrepreneurs' minds. At the same time, entrepreneurs, typically hyper focused on controlling everything they can to optimize growth. And, insurance is really for those things that are out of your control, to Kyle's point. Who would have thought, his example of the cartels taking over a load down in Mexico, and no matter what you do from a founder perspective, short of buying insurance, there's nothing you can do to stop that from happening, or a fire from happening, or a hurricane or other natural disaster. So, that's once again why we focus on making it so simple and embedded, because our thought is that I think Kyle does probably recognize at some point, and definitely does now, but maybe recognized before that he should have it. But the experience we had from so many is that they tried to get it, and maybe they took a few minutes to go and do it, and it was just confusing and asking all these questions that they didn't know, and they just dropped off because of the friction that existed. So, our intent is to try to remove that friction, to make it as easy for those people to, properly protect their goods and have insurance work to protect, all that they've worked hard to build. I think another sort of interesting thing that we've seen as this product has come live is that while ensuring the inventory is in everyone's, every 3PL's contract that we've been in touch with, the degree to which they're enforcing this requirement is very, very light in most cases. And when we talk to the 3PL operators, their thought is, hey, listen, we're trying to get these customers in. We make them aware of the fact that they need to have insurance. And, if we mess up something, we're responsible for it. But natural disasters and that effect, they're responsible for and should have insurance. But we don't, have a way of easily offering that or confirming, that they do have it or don't have it. And as a result, I mean, we had a client that we were talking to the other day that's doing $90 million in sales and has $10 million across 2 different warehouses, that they were just under the impression that they were covered because the 3PL mentioned it when they were first signing up and then never brought it again because they're just like, I don't know how to deal with it. So, we really see this solution as solving for both problems, both at the operator level and at the, customer level, where, we're giving the customer an easy way through this embedded solution, but we're also empowering the operators to be able to provide this solution to their customers. Because, I mean, if something was to happen to that customer, obviously that customer is going to, potentially lose their whole business that, is generating, in that case, $90 million. And that's years and years of work that they've taken to get that there. But the backlash to that 3PL operator, and the negative PR that comes with that, even though that they had it in the contract that, that customer was supposed to have their own inventory, could be catastrophic to them. So, we really try to look at it both ways. And, that's why we consider it partnerships and selling it through these 3PL operators. So, that's sort of our thought on those few points.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great call out too there on the operator side and the 3PL side, because I think sometimes too, like you mentioned, I mean, the one example of the brand, and they thought they were covered fully, and it turned out they weren't quite as covered as they thought maybe they would be or wanted to. And I'm curious from Kyle, on your perspective, because you guys use a 3PL, I mean, when you first started to go to a 3PL or fulfillment partner, I mean, what was your kind of perception around that coverage? And now obviously you guys have your own coverage through StartShore here, but I mean, how was that understanding when you were first kind of navigating that arena?
It was not on my short list of things to ask questions about. I'm not sure if I speak for some or all of early e-com founders, but when you partner with a 3PL, you are most concerned with the cost to get the product to the customer. We're not thinking about insurance for inventory. We're not thinking about the longevity of the partnership as far as things outside of the unit economics that make sense for us to continue to scale. And part of the reason we're not thinking about that is because insurance is painful. It's just for people, it's painful in the sense that I think the history of insurance doesn't have a good rep because it's opaque, it's not sexy. I don't understand, and maybe you never see you don't see the return on investment other than peace of mind. What's really cool about Starcher, and as I mature as a founder, I look at it, and what Tim was just saying is really exciting to get operators on the 3PL side, because then they don't have to, like, we're already seeing this, and this is happening in other areas. For example, if you go on Swoverall's website and you check out, you will be prompted with insurance on your order. And that also is going to make the carbon emissions zero on the order as well. And we partner with a company called Corso through that. And so at the customer level, there's this insurance, we're being conditioned to value insurance more. I recently moved down to Maryland, but I come up to New York City quite often. And when I get an Amtrak ticket, I always check that box for $9 of, in case whatever happens. I now check that. I didn't always check it. Now I check it. And what Tim, and not to put vision in, what I see, but creating that checkbox like experience for founders where it becomes a no-brainer to protect your inventory it's a good idea when you hear these things and you're like, that doesn't exist already. Why isn't that being done? So that's my position on it.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective there too, and kind of the relation there as you're relating it to kind of ensuring that package or your trip or something like that. I mean, I think it's also got good call out too, that where insurance is not necessarily the sexiest thing or the most exciting thing to look at or search for, and I think it is kind of very much a thing where, well, you don't necessarily think about the insurance until something bad happens, and it's like you wish you had that insurance, right? So maybe Tim, maybe you could tell us, we say that warehouses are sexy at the new warehouse, but maybe you could tell us how Startshore is making insurance sexy for people like Kyle.
Yeah, thank you. And no offense taken on insurance not traditionally being sexy. I think I don't know what's harder to make sexy, warehouses or insurance. We've both got our mountains to climb here. But yeah, I mean, I think what it's really about is, recognizing how busy, founders are and trying to just take as much friction out of it, because the reality with insurance is, you're buying something that you hope you never have to use. And that's a tricky thing to sell. Now, ultimately, you sit down and you take a minute to think about it and realize that, it's protecting all those things that you've worked hard to build, and then it becomes more relevant. But it's not revenue producing. It's not, increasing the speed to which you can get your product to customers. As far as, what it's doing to advance the business, which is what most entrepreneurs are focused on, it's not. Right. It's there when, things hit the fan. And that's something that, as Kyle alluded to earlier, takes some maturity in your business life cycle to realize the importance of that. And, our hope is that because we've now made, this inventory insurance so simple, and similarly with co-working, that founders don't have to find out the hard way. That I'm sure there's countless tales of entrepreneurs that have been caught flat-footed, not having the coverage that they have in place, and having those moments. And maybe they'd looked into it in the past, maybe they hadn't. But if we put it right in front of them, like the example of Kyle giving of adding on the travel insurance to his Amtrak ticket, most entrepreneurs are savvy enough to say, wow, for as little as $50 a month, I can take that downside risk out of things. Sure, that's a no-brainer. That's where we're really focused on, finding the right partners that, want to push this solution forward to their customers. I think one of the tricky things that we come into contact with operators is that they don't want to interject this as something that could create concern about their facility being safe, right? One of the criteria that I imagine most entrepreneurs are looking at when selecting a 3PL is, how secure and safe the space is. Is this a nice, clean, protected place that my inventory is not going to go missing at? Is a prime, parameter, I'd imagine, for most. And is introducing insurance something that someone goes, oh, wait, so you're not responsible for keeping a safe, secure warehouse? And it's like, no, this is to protect you against things that are out of our control. A hurricane comes up the coast, or, fires happen. I mean, we came across a stat the other day that I've been a little hesitant to promote, but claiming that there's 6 warehouse fires in the U.S. a day. Now,
A day, wow.
That sounds kind of crazy to me. We've done a few fact checking, and it's only one website that did it, and it surprisingly wasn't insurance related. But, I think now, whether those are self-storage units or what have you, that stat seems a little high to us, and we don't have the data to back it up. But accidents happen. Pipes burst, fires happen. And, just like the accident happened with the cartel in Mexico for Kyle's friend here, you can't predict when they're going to go wrong. And you can get a nice, safe facility that's got sprinklers and alarm systems and all that stuff. And that'll, get you a long way from protection. But, this is for those unforeseeable events that are, out of everyone's control. So, that's been one of the things that we've been trying to make sure we get right with our messaging to our 3PL partners, that this is, supplementary to the clean, safe facility that they're already running, and, an additional sort of solution to offer to their customers. And, so we've got a two-sided sale, right? We've got the sale to our partner 3PLs, and then the sale to the customers. And, both involve education. 80% of our customers are first-time insurance buyers. So as much as we like to make things simple, we have a lot of focus in creating our content in ways that make it easy for entrepreneurs to understand what they're getting and how the claim process works. And I think that's as much of a part of the game as anything.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think it's such a great point to highlight that, those accidents can happen at any time and unexpectedly. And obviously, like you said, I think it's kind of interesting because you touch on, is that a secure space, is there fire suppression systems in place and all these things. And it's kind of, you focus on that physical a little bit, the physical that you can see immediately. And sometimes you don't think about, all those things that might be kind of invisible issues in a sense until they become visible, like a fire or something like that, or a hurricane, as you mentioned. I mean, I think it's really important to be able to understand that and be able to create that peace of mind. And I'm curious too. I mean, I think my understanding is that Kyle had a previous policy and then switched to Start Shore, and I think that's important to highlight that process here too as well, because I think we talked about earlier how Start Shore allows you to insure only the average inventory level for that month, right? So if people are listening and they're curious, like, how do I now switch my policy, which maybe I'm overpaying 1 month, maybe I'm underpaying 1 month based on how my inventory levels fluctuate. I mean, how does that process work, and is it easy to just kind of switch?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And, most of our customers come to us through, our partnerships with the co-working spaces. Kyle was unique in that we met at an entrepreneurial event here in New York City. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, his stunning overalls caught my eye. So Kyle was a little, untraditional as to how, our typical customer comes to us, but, we're part of the entrepreneurial network and do meet plenty of our customers through, events like that. But in the case of what Kyle had before, it was what is traditionally been sold as sort of a static policy where the broker would ask the client, hey, what do you think your maximum inventory is going to be over the next 12 months? And let's make sure that we're insuring to whatever you think that is, because if you have a fire in the warehouse at peak inventory, we want to make sure that, we're protecting the worst case scenario. Insurance is about protecting against these catastrophic events, right? So you want to make sure that you use that value. Well, for most of the year, you're paying for more than what you need. And, amongst the many, archaic components of insurance that frustrated me, that was one that I thought could be easily solved for with today's technology. So the first integration we built was with Shopify to allow a customer to do that. So, to answer your question, if we've got someone that's coming to us through, either, an existing 3PL partner, we'll use that as a case. They'd come to us through one of their landing pages, answer 5 questions. They'd get a quote in under 60 seconds. If they want to move forward, they could connect their Shopify store at that time and purchase right on the website. We have, the ability for them to talk to anyone if they have additional questions. And that's how seamless the flow can be for, your typical customer coming through, a warehouse partner. Now, if you've got a customer that is using a warehouse that's not a partner of ours, obviously we'd love to talk to them. There's a little bit of an extra step involved there that, that customer can still get an indication on our website, but they just can't purchase until we connect with that warehouse and pre-approve them, because one of the things that we do with pre-approved warehouses is collect their building information. So, the age of the building, the year of the updates, the security, the sprinklers, all that type of stuff that is traditionally asked in a normal policy, in a normal application for insurance, that we found that entrepreneurs aren't going to know the answers to, or is going to be something that they've got to go and ask the 3PL for. And now the process is all slowed down. So, when we do have customers coming to us from non-pre-approved warehouses that might have just found us online or, met us at an event or something like that, that's an extra step. We can usually have the warehouse pre-approved within 24 hours and then they're good to go. So still pretty seamless when we have that experience. And, to the warehouse operators that are on the space, you can come to our website. There's a spot where you can, click to become a approved warehouse partner with us. We'd love to talk to you guys and be able to offer this as an additional tool to your customers and, give this, allow this to be an additional service that you're providing to them while also sort of protecting your backside and, making sure that if something was to go wrong, that you're not having a bunch of angry customers that thought they were protected, even though your contract clearly states that they aren't. So those are sort of the 2 ways of coming and getting insurance through us.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think obviously, it sounds like a certainly a value add for 3PL and the operation to be able to have that and be a pre-approved warehouse with you guys, it sounds like as well. So I'm curious in that regard, Kyle. I mean, I know you guys have a 3PL now and I think you're pretty happy with them, but I mean, if you were searching for a new 3PL, I mean, would that be something, I guess at this maturity level in your brand, would that be something that would really be appealing and kind of an advantage to you with a 3PL?
Yes, absolutely. I am really happy with our 3PL partners currently. ShipDaddy, based in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, which I shouldn't say that because it's in Newville, and the guys there are actually, I think, from Newville. So, and I love Newville. So it was actually there that I went to my first Sheetz gas station, I believe. And if you haven't been to a Sheetz, it's like Wawa on steroids with the food that they have there. It was crazy, but it's a non-negotiable to, if we, in the event that we were to move to another 3PL domestically, that they have some sort of inventory protection that would be really important. And the good thing is I'm probably not going to move to them unless they're already working with Tim or they're open to working with Tim, because it's become important, as you said, Kevin, to where we are within the Swoveralls brand journey and how we look at risk. And that's an area that we now take very seriously.
Yeah, definitely a value add there, I would say, for 3PLs to get that pre-approved status. And I think overall too, to direct a brand in that direction where, I think one of the big important things in my eyes from Start Shore is certainly like that ability to only insure for the average inventory levels that you're carrying. And I think, you're going to see some overall cost savings there in the long run. So I think it's definitely a value add there. But I'm curious, Kyle, from your perspective, I know you're very focused on the tech side. So I'm curious, for you as an e-com operator brand, what's exciting to you when technology kind of coming up and what's top of mind?
Yeah, there's one thing that I'll share with all of you that is very top of mind. I also just first want to go on record and apologize for saying that insurance is not sexy, because I think it's so unsexy that it is sexy. Same with warehouses. I actually admire in my next life as an entrepreneur, whatever I do, I want it to be something that isn't stereotypically attractive from a business model, because I think that's where you can have a lot of disruption. So Tim and Kevin, I do admire the spaces that you play in daily, coming from the guy that's kind of, trying to get as much sex appeal as I can in overalls, lying on a couch on my LinkedIn profile. So I mentioned earlier Purple Dot. I mentioned brands like Taylor Stitch and Aloha's that I think were pioneering this internal crowdfunding concept. And another player that I have not mentioned yet is a company called Portless. And Portless is a very interesting logistics service that allows Swoveralls to ship from essentially our supplier in China directly to customers for a fee that is very competitive with what we are shipping to customers from our 3PL in the US. And this is how we are using this. Recently, last month, we launched a print collection. We made floral print. We made a doodle print, which it looked like a 8-year-old kind of scribbled on Swoveralls, and believe it or not, people love them. But we also did a dinosaur print, which did really well. And what we typically do is we say, hey, we're going to make these things if enough people buy them. And if you pre-order them, we will send you your pair in about 2 months. What we also don't say, but what is implied, is however many we make pre-order, we'll probably make about 2x total, because people are liking these. And so we'll have some to sell on our site for people that haven't spoken for them yet. What we've been using Portless for is for all of the pre-orders we get, instead of sending those in on a boat or on a plane to ShipDaddy, and then I love the ShipDaddy guys, but they got to make money too, and so they're charging us to receive the goods, pick, pack, and ship, and then we pay duties. Instead of doing all of that, we ship from Shanghai to our customers, and that's where Portless comes in, and it's been an absolute cheat code for Swoveralls and our business model as we continue to double down on the pre-order and crowdfunding element of what we do.
Yeah, I think that's so awesome, and I hadn't heard of them before until you mentioned before we went live here. But I would definitely be interested to learn more about them, Portless, and I think you said it's 3 to 5 days, right, from shipping from China.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. So very interesting stuff there. And if people are interested in learning more about StartSure and potentially getting some insurance from you, Tim, we know you don't bite, as your headline says, but what's the best way to go about that and learn more?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and thank you for having us both on today. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it's as simple as going to our website, startsure.co, no M at the end. The person selling the domain for that wanted too much money, so we're .co, which has fortunately become more hip these days, anyways. So we're happy with it. But yeah, startsure.co. We have the ability to be contacted at hello@startsure.co. And for anyone listening to this today or on the podcast later, please feel free to reach out to me at tim@startsure.co. So any one of those ways you can get to us, and we're happy to help.
Awesome. And we'll definitely put that up on the New Warehouse channels as well, so people can easily find that link too. And Kyle, how about you? If people want to get themselves into some Swoveralls, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to get comfier with yourself and to free the waistband is to go to swoveralls.com and treat yourself. If you want to chat with me, you can DM me on LinkedIn. I saw that I think Aaron requested to connect with me, which I'm happy to do. If you do want to connect with me, just a little pet peeve that I have, please send me a message as to the context as to why. I'm sure, maybe Kevin and Tim, sometimes you don't even know who these people are, and they reach out, and it causes me anxiety, but that maybe that's a podcast for another time. And Kyle at swoveralls.com works as well. And thank you, Kevin, for having me on. And thank you, Tim, for inviting me to chat with you. This has been great.
Yes, thank you both for coming on, and thank you for the listeners as well for sticking here with us and learning all about this topic. And definitely appreciate what Start Short is doing for the overall business industry and making it easier from the insurance perspective, and also for Swoveralls for freeing the waistband, as Kyle said there as well. So thank you once again to Tim and Kyle today for joining me on the stage to discuss this topic, and hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the new warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the new warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.